are all gathered here to celebrate another safe and successful planting season. The weather's been pretty good, only a few days of rain. Overall, we were in and out of the fields pretty quickly. Not like a couple years ago where we were still planting in June. That was a bad year, am I right? That's the funny thing about farming. You never quite know what to expect. Whether it's working with animals or working with machinery, we always have to expect the unexpected. It's just like when I was working for the dairy farm at Iowa State and there was a first calf heifer in the barn. And, as we all know, first calf heifers can be a little bit hard to deal with. And Iowa State was a $15 million facility that when they redid it. We had daily access to our veterinarians, and they were some of the most educated people and most world-renowned veterinarians in the world. And so we were supposed to have a twins list for every cow that had twins. They were expected to have twins. And for some reason, this particular heifer was not on the list. I don't know why. She just wasn't. So I was on the morning shift, which means I had to be there at about 4 in the morning, which everyone who's farmers in here knows how that feels. And after all of my chores were done, I went through the barns and I saw this heifer giving birth. So obviously what you have to do, you have to help this heifer give birth and take care of the calf and all that good stuff. I'm sure that there's probably one thing that people don't really know about first calf heifers if you don't grow up on a farm, and that is they're pretty hard to deal with. So long story short, I got this heifer and the calf all taken care of and moved the cow to the barn and went about my daily chores. So, it's never an easy good day on the farm. If you have a good day, something is bound to happen and go wrong. So this was one of those days, and somebody decided not to show up for night chores. So that means that I was there from 4 in the morning. I finished morning chores at about 12, and then I was there for another 4 or 5 hours after that. So about the time night chores started, I noticed the heifer. She was in the fresh pen, and she had legs sticking out of her hinder. So I thought to myself, great, wonderful. This heifer isn't done giving birth. She's going to have a twin. So I immediately moved her to the sick pen to see if, she could give birth to this calf on her own. And she was pushing, but nothing was really happening. So I got one of my coworkers to help me, and we ended up, this is kind of graphic, but we ended up having to go in and try and pull the calf out because he was actually kind of like this. His head was forward, but his legs were behind him. So, people probably don't know this, but when you have a calf, their legs need to be out. So, lucky old us, we got to be elbow deep in cow. And we could not get this bull calf's legs to come forward. We got one of them to come forward, so then he was kind of like this, but we ended up calling the farmhand, and then the farmhand ended up calling the vet, and I had to leave because I had been at the farm for about 12 hours at that point, and I was done for the day. So I came back the next day. I asked the farmhand, hey, how's that heifer doing? Well, it turned out the calf didn't live. So the first calf lived, but the second calf unfortunately died. And then a few weeks later, well, I wouldn't say a few weeks, but about a week later, the heifer ended up getting a pretty bad infection, and she had to be sent down the road because she couldn't be treated. So, that's kind of how farming goes sometimes. It's a win-win or it's a lose-lose. It's what keeps us going as farmers, when we have those good days and then we have the bad days. But sometimes our blunders can be kind of humorous, right? So we all make mistakes and we kind of just learn from them. I myself grew up on a small farm. We had 40 cows. Our biggest tractor was an International 1088, which is a small tractor. And I was fortunate enough to meet a wonderful man who lives on a pretty big farm and they use fairly large equipment. So, of course, I'm just thrilled that he's got all this big equipment and lives on a farm. And there was one day when he asked me to go ride with him to dump corn on an off-site bin. And so I was just, tickled. And we did this, and it ended up, we filled the bin up. So we had to bring the auger and the semi home. So, being that I was the only other person there, he looks to me and he says, "You want to drive the tractor?" And I'm just like, "Well, yeah, of course I want to drive the tractor." So, he put me in the tractor. It was about a 15-mile trek back home. And I made it all the way home. I was so proud of myself. I got in the driveway. I was like, yes, I drove this big equipment. He's going to be so proud of me. And as we got in the driveway, he was kind of standing off to the side going like this. And so I was trying to watch him to see what he was doing. And I had to turn because he wanted me to park the tractor on the other side of the road, or on the driveway. So that's good, and as I'm, turning the tractor, all of a sudden I see him do this, and from this he goes like this, and I'm like, what's going on? And all of a sudden I felt the crunch, and I looked back, and I had turned too sharply, and the tire caught one of where you dump the grain into. It had caught that, kicked it up, and kinked the auger bad enough to where it wouldn't have worked if we didn't fix it. And I was really embarrassed, and I felt really bad. And fortunately enough for me, his family was forgiving. They didn't yell at me. They weren't mad. They just said, well, stuff happens. And it was then that I knew that his family was a perfect fit for me, because any other person would have gotten just so angry. And I'm so happy to be here with them today to celebrate this after harvest dinner. And it's just like I said before, there's times on the farm when you get so frustrated, but for every frustration, there's always something that's just as rewarding. So at the end of the day, if you're doing what you love and you come home to an awesome family, it's one of the most rewarding feelings you can ever have. So I'm honored to share this planting supper with good food, good company, and we hope that the fall harvest brings a bountiful harvest and another good year of memories. And that's my audience, the farm family.